Thank you for joining me on another episode of Infertility and Me. I am your host, Monique, and today I have a very, very special guest all the way from the West Coast. Her name is Sandra. She's a nurse mom and wife, and Sandra has a very unique story for us today. So we're just going to jump right into it so I don't have to hold you guys too long today. And Sandra, can you give me a little background info on you, dear?
Sure. So my name is Sandra Gwines, and I am a nurse. I'm actually a cannabis nurse, and I live out in California. My husband's is in the military, and we're from the East Coast, but ended up here. I am on this show to talk about my fertility story, infertility. Really, I struggled with infertility for about 6 years. Did all the things, and none of that worked. And then it was a long road, but I'm excited to share my story today and really just, hopefully my story will, give hope to a lot of people that are going through infertility, because I know how challenging it is. And, I still feel the same emotions when I think back to going through infertility. It doesn't go away. That pain is still there, the infertility. So I know that there's, it's a process. It's a journey. Infertility is a journey. So I hope that my story can, inspire and give hope to a lot of the women that are out there struggling like I was.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 years is a long, long time. We actually were married for 6 years when I got pregnant with my son through IVF. And I technically go by like 4 years because that's when we really started trying 2 years after we got married, because we was like just so busy working crazy and stuff. My husband's in the restaurant business. So we worked crazy hours, 7 days a week. So you said your journey was for 6 years, right? Before you were able to get pregnant and everything, right?
Yes. So we started infertility more of like a conversation. It was kind of like, okay, we're going to do this, but we didn't have a plan, and we didn't know infertility was going to be a thing. It didn't even cross my mind. Like, I felt like people do this all the time. You just do the thing and you get pregnant. That's how it works.
Yep.
And as a nurse, my background is maternity nursing. So at the time, I was a maternity nurse. I was witnessing babies being born every day.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like that was something so foreign and not, and something that I wasn't going to be able to do or, accomplish in my life, like being a mother. We started off with just like, nothing, no meds, no nothing, just winging it and trying it. And then after we have been trying, because the doctor tells you like try a year first and then come back and let us know. And so we did all those things. And then I started taking Clomid, and I forget what the other med I was taking was, but I started taking different medications and just kind of seeing how that went, but nothing happened. In the middle of all this, because I was going to school, I was working full time, I was going to school.
Goodness gracious.
And I was getting my master's degree, and I was working full time, and I was doing all these fertility treatments. And I tell everyone, I'm like, the thing about fertility is that you get so focused on the outcome that it kind of doesn't allow you to live in the present, because you're constantly waiting for like that next, cycle or that next doctor's appointment or that next thing. So I tell everyone, I kind of felt like that was my journey, was like just going through all these steps and processes. I got accepted into this program where in the hospital I worked in, they were willing to try different fertility treatments, and we wouldn't have to pay for it. So we did the 3 rounds of IUI, and we did fertility drugs, and we did all that stuff. But it was very, very challenging. My husband, towards the middle of the treatments, was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And mostly was because of my response. I was very depressed, and, the hormones make you emotional. I was getting the shots at one point, and he was having to inject me. And I think the whole process, it was just so overwhelming for our marriage. You know what I mean? Because we were newlyweds.
Yeah.
And we were going through this whole thing, and it was a lot. It was a lot. My husband, like I said, he's in the military, so he was working, pretty intense job as well. And in this whole process, we're doing this, and you know how it is. You're like, okay, right now, today's the day. We got to go down there right now and go get this, this blood test done or this thing. And so it was it wasn't convenient, right?
Nope, never is.
It was very challenging, you know, for our life at the time. And then we knew that we were going to get to a point in the road where we weren't going to be able to afford any more procedures. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think after we did the 3 rounds of the IUI and all the tests and all the drugs and all the things, and they were like, we don't know. We don't see any reason why you can't get pregnant, but we also don't know if you can ever get pregnant because we've tried all these things. We didn't do IVF because we couldn't afford it. I mean, that's just it. You know, we're a military family, and we just could not afford it. And I researched, I felt like this was my chance. Like IVF was going to be it for me, you know, like if I could get in there, if I could figure it out. You know, and I thought about, you know, how can I afford it? And can I take out a loan? Like, I mean, there's just all the things that go through your mind, but think about it again, like we're a newlywed. So here I am, I'm like, you know, I want to spend, you know, tens of thousands of dollars with you and have a baby.
Yeah.
And my husband was, you know, my husband is very faithful in the fact that he's like, you know, once he believes something's going to happen, then he's good. Like, you know, he's good. And he would always tell me, I know it's going to happen. He's like, I just know it. And I'm like, you know, in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe we're going to adopt, or I don't know. I started thinking other options. So we stopped fertility treatments for about after 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
And for like 2 years, we were just kind of like, you know, whatever, we'll figure it out, see what happens.
Kind of winging it a little bit.
Yeah. It was just like, we're not going to try anything. I had mentally prepared myself, like, okay, because I'm, you know, I'm 42 now. I'll be 43 next week. So I'm an older mom, and I was, you know, I'm in my mid to late 30s, and I'm like, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I mean, after a certain age, I don't know if I wanted to get pregnant anymore.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like that clock is ticking, you know, all the things you hear.
All the biological clocks.
Yep. I'm like, oh my God, my clock is ticking. What's going on? What am I going to do? But, you know, I always tell people, I'm like, you know, I have an amazing relationship with my husband, and we genuinely enjoy being together. So I was like, you know what,
that helped.
This is okay. I'm like, you know, if we can't have kids, we're just still going to have an amazing life because we enjoy traveling, and, you know, there's so many things we like to do, and it will give us a freedom to do, you know, some other things. I was, at the time, I had started a nonprofit for domestic violence, and I was doing these workshops. And in one of the workshops, it was, we were doing a visual journaling, and it was, you walk into a room and you see yourself. What do you see? Or something like that, you know? And one of the women in my group she recorded down how she had been divorced, and she felt like she had, like her family, you know, the goals of her life were to be married, have kids, and have a great job. And then she lost her job, she got divorced, and she wasn't in a great financial place. And she felt like she was, you know, like her family looked at her and wasn't respecting her because, you know, she wasn't where she thought people should be at her age. She was in her 60s.
Okay.
And when she said that, I got up and I said, you know, I totally understand that, because here I am in my late 30s, and I thought I was going to be a mom, and I thought I was going to be, you know, I've worked with babies my whole life. Like, this is what I do, you know, families, babies, this is my thing, but it's not going to happen for me. I said, and you know what? I feel like God has a different plan for me, and I'm just going to, you know, be okay with that plan. You know, my husband and I have talked about traveling, blah, blah, blah. So I said all this. And at the time that I said this, I was already pregnant.
And you didn't know it. Okay.
I didn't know. So like about 2 weeks later, I just was tired. I'm like, I just feel terrible. I really thought I was sick because I'd never felt like this before, but it was extremely different than anything I'd felt before. So I was like, I don't know what's happening. Maybe I have I had shingles, like a little bit prior to this. I'm like, oh, maybe it's the shingles coming back. Like, I just started to freak out a little bit. Well, we went on a little road trip, and I slept for like 10 hours in the car. And my husband was like, okay, that was crazy. I got home, and I was like, you know what? And this is the part where, like, my story kind of, you know, it's like I tell people, I'm like, even when you're pregnant, you're still like, you feel like this is not supposed to happen. So there's all that like stress and concern that comes with it,
Mhm.
you know? So I went to
Mhm.
the drugstore and I was like, all right, I'm going to get a laxative. And I don't know why. I did not think I was pregnant. Pregnancy wasn't something that I even had in my brain. But when we were on our little road trip, I stopped and visited my sister. And I was like, when you were pregnant, you know, did your boobs hurt really bad? Like at this, you know, very early stage? She was like, oh my God. She was so excited. And I'm like, oh my God, crazy. I'm like, that would be like impossible, but whatever. Still didn't believe it, you know, that could be possible. So when I'm at the drugstore, I'm looking at this laxative and it's like, you know, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you know, talk to your doctor before blah, blah, blah. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking to myself,
Mhm.
whatever. I look down the aisle and there's a pregnant woman holding a little baby in her, she's pregnant and she's holding like a toddler. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, she's looking at pregnancy tests or something in the pregnancy area, whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, she would know, you know, she knows if she's
Mhm.
pregnant. She's been pregnant before. You know what I'm saying? Of course
Yep.
she's standing over, you know, whatever it was. And I started to have all these like feelings about this pregnancy test and purchasing it. Like I had already taken so many pregnancy tests. I mean, I could probably like own stock in the pregnancy test you know,
Yep.
department,
Yep.
you know, because I had purchased so many of those. So I didn't want to waste any more money. You know, I wasn't at the Dollar Tree, which the Dollar Tree test, just for everyone as a nurse, I will let you know, they are amazing tests. That's what we use a lot in community nursing. So just so you know. Um,
Mhm.
but, you know, I was like, okay, I don't want to spend $14 on this test or whatever it was because I couldn't believe that it was possible, you know.
Yeah.
Bought the test, took it home. I told my husband, I said, I'm going to take this pregnancy test. And if I'm pregnant, you know, I'm going to be so excited. But I was really like not, you know, very matter of fact about everything. I was like, otherwise I'm going to take this laxative and hopefully it's going to make me feel better.
You were ready
And
to do a complete detox.
yeah, yeah. And he's like, yeah. So he's like, okay. So I took the pregnancy test and I came out of the bathroom. I'm like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. My husband was like, I knew you were pregnant yesterday.
I think men,
So,
you know, when you've been with somebody for so long, they, you know, they get
yeah,
intuitive things
intuitive.
about you too. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And
yeah,
so I can definitely relate to that with my
yeah.
husband. He was the same
So,
way.
yeah. So my pregnancy was natural and, you know, happened spontaneously and all that stuff. But it definitely, once I was pregnant, I still carried that stress and that pain of infertility, my whole pregnancy. It wasn't like I'm pregnant and I'm just so happy. There was a lot of
Still grief
emotion.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was still a lot of grief. Um, when I was about 10 weeks, or I think it was about 10 weeks pregnant, we went to a birthday. It was like my friend's birthday and they rented this house out and we all went. It was like couples. It was a beautiful trip. And
Mhm.
the night of the birthday party, I got dressed and I just started bleeding really bad. And I remember I was standing there, I had white pants on.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Uh-oh.
And I started bleeding, like,
Oh
you know,
wow.
heavily bleeding. It was more than I felt comfortable. It was like coming down my leg and everything, not to be graphic, but it was definitely something that was startling. And my husband, you know, I had to tell him, I'm like, babe, I'm bleeding. And he's looking at me, he's like, how much? So I just showed him because I needed
Mhm.
him to see, like, this is what I'm experiencing. And I'm just freaking out right now. So we ended up we were in Atlanta at the time for this event. And we ended up going to like the nearest hospital, got
Mhm.
there. And you know, I thought that's it. You know,
Mhm.
this is
Mhm.
how the story ends, you know, right here in this Atlanta terrible hospital that I was in. Um,
Wow.
and I was bleeding the whole time I was waiting in the waiting room area. And they had me waiting for hours and hours and hours. And I felt every minute I was sitting in that chair, I was in my mind, I thought my baby's gone and I'm just sitting here, you know, with this dead fetus inside of me. I mean, that's dramatic, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was feeling at the moment. And they finally took me back and it took forever because it was like you know, it was late at night and not the best time to be in the emergency room. They didn't have somebody to do ultrasounds available right away. Like, had to find somebody.
Hmm.
Um, Finally, you know, they get me back there and they wheel me into the ultrasound. And the guy has me faced where I cannot see the ultrasound. So I told him, I said, I need to turn around and I need to see. I don't want to wait
Yeah.
until the doctor tells me. And as soon as he turned me around and I saw her dancing in there, I was like, oh my God, thank you.
Yes, yes.
I was like,
Woo!
I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. So by the time I left the hospital, I mean, we had been there all night long. Like when we got back, it was like, almost the sun was almost coming up. But by the time I got back, I had stopped bleeding. And it was just like kind of like follow up with your doctor, don't do anything strenuous type of stuff.
Yeah.
And they didn't see anything that could be causing any kind of issues. So that from 10 weeks to 42 weeks, I felt like any day that could happen, and so I had the worst pregnancy. And and I felt guilty for that. I felt guilty because there were so many women like those that are listening right now that are going through fertility, and they would give nothing, they would give anything, you know what I'm saying, to be pregnant and have this miracle. But because of this scare, it's like I could not enjoy my pregnancy.
And then with the infertility,
yes.
So many years of infertility before.
Yes.
Your infertility diagnosis unexplained?
Unexplained infertility, yeah.
Okay.
And so, we ended up, I made it through the pregnancy. We moved at 20 something weeks, I moved to California. So that was like, and I'm saying all these parts of my story because I feel like sometimes we get so stuck on the infertility part, but your whole story really shapes everything.
Everything brings it together.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we traveled across the country. I'm 20 something weeks pregnant to a place I don't know. And I don't know a doctor. I have nobody. The person who's been with me on this infertility journey is no longer with me. My doctor that I've had a relationship with. So someone who prayed for me to get pregnant, who basically, when I told her I didn't want to do any more treatments and I wanted to be less invasive, she said, okay, I won't send you back to the fertility specialist. I will help you from my own clinic, because she knew I was over it at that point, So after I had built this relationship with her, it was time to move, across the country. So we got here, and I was stressing out because we're a military family. You have to get established with a clinic. It's a whole process. And it was a long time before I got seen.
Wow.
It was a long time before I got seen. And I had just had all these issues. So I was a little bit concerned because I wanted to see my baby. I want to know everything was going okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I got a little bit obsessive, I guess, because I ended up buying one of those.
The fetal heart monitors?
Yes, that's it. And I was doing that at home just so I could have like peace of mind.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah.
That was my peace of mind. And then the craziest thing I did was after I went to the doctor and got a doctor, here was a clinic, and I wasn't pleased with the fact that I was going to see different doctors every time I went because I was so spoiled in Charlotte. I wanted one doctor. I wanted somebody who was going to know me and understand what I had been through and would be, able to guide me the rest of my pregnancy. But I couldn't get that at this clinic that I was going to. So I went online, I started doing some research, and I found out that I could give birth at the birth center here. And that sounded scary because I'm a nurse and maternity nurse, and I've been, I've been there for all the good and the bad, and so I was
what it looks like if it can get really bad. Yeah.
So I was a little worried, but at the same time, I felt like if I'm going to have this baby and I have all this stress, I need to know that I can have one person, that I know this person, that I can trust this person. They're going to be with me the whole step of the way. And I needed that for my relationship with, where I was in my stress. So we did find a birth center, and they were really accommodating because I was already like way past the weeks that they accept new people. But they did accommodate me. I got a doula. We did the whole thing. I had a lot of complications during my pregnancy because I had really bad migraines.
Wow.
And they were pretty debilitating migraines. So I was taking some narcotics through my pregnancy because it was the only way I could like function. I would have to go to the emergency room a lot to get, they would give me like these Benadryl cocktails. It was like something to put me to sleep and let me get past the pain.
Wow.
And then they would send me home. So I did that a lot. And then when we got here, I guess because the hormone is, they say the hormones, the estrogen levels are high, and so it causes you to have all these, or is it progesterone? Progesterone levels are high, and so it causes you to have all these headaches. But as you get further in the pregnancy, those start to like even out, so they go away. So I think around 30 weeks that stopped. But up until then, I was like, I would get in an ice bath,
Oh,
put
wow.
like, I'd be in the dark. You know,
Yeah,
I'd have to have like ice wrapped around my head. I would get these like terrible headaches. But I knew when I went to deliver that I had been through all this stuff and that I just wanted it to be peaceful. You know, I wanted to bring my baby into the world like as peaceful as possible. So
yeah,
we had a amazing delivery at the birth center. You know, we got there and everything, you know, the delivery and everything was okay. I did have some trauma. Like I ended up, and this is something that I guess when I was pregnant, when I had that little bleed during the 10 weeks, my placenta probably separated a little bit. And that's what caused the bleed, because when I went to give birth, my placenta was like some places were hardened and calcified. So it was hard for them to get the placenta out.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So I know. So now I'm at the birth center and I have all this bleeding, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to take you to the hospital? Are we going to, you know, and they packed up all my stuff because the hospital's like right up the street.
That was good.
So you have a backup doctor in case there's an issue. And I started, you know, losing a lot of blood. So they were very concerned. But once they, you know, I had a great midwife, and she was able to like get the placenta out, get my bleeding down, get my baby breastfeeding right away. And, you know, and I tell everyone, I'm like, even though it was the scariest experience, it was also a beautiful experience. But I spent many, many, many months after I had my daughter still in a stage of grief. I thought that at any moment something could happen to her. I had a lot of anxiety. I was depressed a lot because of what happened during my pregnancy, and I was afraid maybe, you know, she would have some kind of lasting effects, you know. There were a lot of, you know,
or like milestones. She wouldn't meet her milestones because of, you know, maybe something happened, you know, in utero and something like, the anxiety is a big thing when you dealt with infertility and then you have a hard pregnancy like that.
I mean, my daughter's 4.5 and she is she is not, we're not worried about milestones.
Right.
We're greatly like, slow down.
It. Yeah. Greatly surpassed it. Yep.
Slow down. You know, it's a blessing. It has been a blessing. You know, the one thing I tell people all the time is like, when you do go through infertility, it's like, don't listen to other people's timelines and narratives about what your life is supposed to be, because to this day, and I'm going to be 43 next month, I have no desire to have any more kids, not because I don't want more children, because I do want more children, but just because the lifestyle that I would like to have with my daughter and with my family, I don't want to bring another child into my family right now, because I'm getting older and I feel like I won't be able to give that child as much of myself as I would like to, you know, and, but it's a decision that we made. It's not, I mean, we're not like against having kids or anything like that, but people will tell you all the time, oh, it's time for another one. And I'm like, do you know how much work it took me
to even get, come on,
to this one? Yeah. I'm like, this one was a project and a half, and I am not mentally equipped to do that again. There are people who, you know, they're okay with this process and they're okay with multiple fertility treatments, and their outcomes and maybe their experience is a little different. Yeah. And that's okay. You know, but with my experience and everything that I went through, you know, I went through a lot of postpartum depression. And I felt terrible because I couldn't tell people about it, because I felt like they were going to be like, girl, how are you depressed? This is what you always wanted. You know, you wanted this baby. And it's not that I didn't want my baby. It's just that mentally I was not in a great place. And so, you know, my story of postpartum depression and all those things is kind of what took me from, you know, focusing on just maternity care to ways that women could deal with postpartum depression. And that's how I became a cannabis nurse, because I was lost and I felt like I was drowning every day in the anxiety and depression. And I wanted to be more present with my daughter, because this is the gift that I have been wanting my whole life. And going down that path has been nothing but rewarding for me, because the joy that I imagined I would have when I had my daughter, I have it now, and it took me a while to get there, not because I wasn't happy and not because I didn't look at her and see the most beautiful thing, God has ever created, but because hormonally and physically and mentally,
Yeah.
I still had effects from my pregnancy and postpartum depression, and my mental health wasn't there. But I tell people all the time, because people always ask me, well, what did you do different? And I'm like, I will say the only thing that I feel I changed before I got pregnant is that I changed my diet.
Mm-hmm.
I did change my diet. And I just started, and it's not like I went vegan or I went this or that. I just started to eliminate, I used to drink sodas and juices and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
I only drink water. Like, we don't even buy juice here. We're pretty much like, if you
Getting
can
more
pick
holistic.
it, grow
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
just eating better. I mean, but I have a 4-year-old, so we, tater tots and
You got to, because you know
you
how
know,
picky they are. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
we mix it all together, but we really, really try to focus on being healthy, and just that started right around the time, right before I got pregnant. Like, I started to be a little bit more active, and
Mm-hmm.
started to eat better. And I think that was the biggest thing, because my husband and I, we enjoy food. And my husband is vegan now. He's been vegan for 2 years, I think. But I like meat, so I still eat meat. But that was the only change that I made. People ask me all the time, so that's the only reason I'm sharing, because we're like, well, did you do anything? Did you take anything? That was it. Just being, trying to live a healthier, more balanced lifestyle. And then the other thing is, honestly, I put fertility on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, it wasn't the focus of my everyday. And I think that just lessened the anxiety of, what I was experiencing. And I was able to, you know, because you can't get pregnant if you're stressed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah. And I actually, one of the first episodes that I did, I was talking about, you know, taking time away from infertility, from treatment, IVF, and even if you're in the midst of it, just, going a couple of hours without talking about it, going a couple of days
yes,
without bringing it up. You know what I mean? If you can. I mean, it's different when you're
yeah,
at home with your spouse, but
yeah,
I used to, I would go 2 and 3 days sometimes without even talking about it,
yeah.
just for my own sanity and to,
That's awesome. I mean, and
you
it is
know,
hard. And it is hard when
yeah,
people know that you're going through this, or that people who love you, they just want to see you happy. And if having a baby is what they think is going to make you happy, then that's what they're going to ask you about every time they see you. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yep, yep, yep,
They're like, how's it
absolutely.
going? Oh my God, I'm praying for you, or whatever. And I would be like, this is the most beautiful thing. I have so many people praying for me. When I finally told people I was pregnant, I told my husband, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I never knew how many people were out there just praying for us to have a baby. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it was amazing. But I will say that every day, I'd have people like ask me, or, they call me, check in, how are things going? And sometimes I felt like obligated to tell people, because I felt like they really care about me and they're checking in on me. And then sometimes I felt like, y'all, I don't want to talk about this today. I'm good. I'm like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. It can be very
but
overwhelming. Yeah.
but I'm so grateful to share my story. I'm so grateful it sounds crazy. I'm grateful to have lived my experience, because it brought me to where I am today. Like, I'm doing work right now
That you're passionate about.
that I'm passionate about,
Absolutely.
and that I personally know what it felt like, and I was a maternity nurse for all those years without being a mom. And my students, I taught nursing, and patients, like, they always say, like, how knowledgeable I was and what a great nurse I was. And I'm always surprised, not that people think I was a great nurse, because I think I'm a pretty good nurse, but because I didn't feel, what's the word, I didn't feel like I was supposed to be helping mothers in their journey of birth because I never experienced that myself. Do you see what I'm saying? No matter how passionate I was about it, I always had that guilt of like, but I'm not a mom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I can help you with breastfeeding. Like people are like, oh, you know, I loved helping moms with, you know, getting their babies to latch on initially after they had their babies, and you know, and they would say, well, how do you do it? And I would say, oh, well, you know, I don't have any kids, and it always felt like a in my heart. You know what I'm saying? Like when I would say it. But the truth is, it's definitely it showed me. I mean, after I had my daughter, I couldn't even watch people give birth because it would make me so emotional. I felt like I could feel, I just had so much empathy for, you know what I'm saying? Like pregnant women.
You know what, now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of went through the same thing because my son was a micro preemie. And I remember there was an episode last year's season of This Is Us, and one of the sisters, the sister on that show, she's a main character, she had a baby at like 27 weeks in the show. And I mean, I knew it was fiction, but it's like, man, that hurt really, really bad. I just started crying. And the same thing happened. It was an episode of How to Get Away with Murder. And a young lady gave birth to her preemie baby at 28 weeks in an elevator. And they showed they had like a little infant, you know, that size. It was just like, and even now I can't talk about my son's story without, you know, getting teary-eyed and stuff like that. Like I can talk about infertility all day, but when it's something about, you know, giving birth and that whole process, and it took me
I can't. It's hard for me. Like the only reason I'm able to talk about my story right now with you is because I'm literally like, hey girl, hey, you know,
yeah.
You know, because it's really hard to talk about those emotions. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, my pregnancy, my birth, my whole experience, you know, I had a form of PTSD in a sense, you know what I mean? Like it was something that I carried with me throughout my daughter's first years of life. I'm still anxious, mom. I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely anxious. I'm my only baby. Okay.
Yeah.
Say whatever you want, but that's the only one I got. So I do worry about her often, but it's not that critical. The water's rising so high where I feel like I'm drowning type of, you know, emotion.
Okay.
But the reason is because I had to go back. And this is the thing that I feel like it's important. Once you do go to infertility, it's like you have to go back and you have to resolve all those issues from your past, all the pain, all the hurt. And you have to look at it, you have to feel it, and then just say, okay, there's no place for this anymore. You know what I mean? Because I'm in this other space. And I was only able to do that when I was able to sit, because you are a stay-at-home mom. I don't know when you get to think. I did not have the opportunity to think. I literally was in a constant, you know, baby mode, and then I was exhausted and I would go to sleep. So it wasn't until recently, just within the last year, actually, or maybe a little over a year, that I reconciled with those feelings, that I was able to go back and actually feel those things again, because that's the part about it, is that you don't really want to go back there. You want to feel those things, but you know, and you know, not that I think cannabis is for everyone, but that was the tool that I used to do that. It allowed me to clear all the thoughts in my mind to just focus on visualizing my birth, visualizing my pregnancy, seeing myself as a mother, because I lost my mom a few months before I got pregnant. Seeing myself as a mother, even though I didn't have a mom to say, like, you know, there's something about mothering without your mother that's normal. But I was able to go back and look at all those feelings and process them in a different way. And it was the most freeing thing, not just for me, but for my relationship with my daughter, because, you know, you have to give them wings, you know what I mean? And let them grow. And I felt like I was very protective and very worried about everything. And it's allowed me to see her as an individual and see that she, you know, we're raising her as a young, smart, independent little lady. And she definitely is going to do amazing things. And, you know, there's nothing in my control that I can protect. You know, I can't protect her from the unknowns. You know what I mean? I can just guide her and help her be in a good place. And, you know, that's the only thing I can do. And she's definitely, mommy, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
got this. She's that girl. And that's really challenging when you're, when you're parenting somebody that's so independent. That's really challenging sometimes, because you want to be more in control as a parent. I mean, I hate to say it, but you want to feel like
Yeah, you do.
I have
Yeah.
some parameters around what you're,
Mm-hmm.
what you're going to do and say. And my daughter, she's a good egg. She's a good kid, but she definitely is her own person. And she's taught me a lot about, you know, moving forward from grief,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and allowing myself to be present and enjoy the gift that I've been given, this little
Yeah.
girl.
I like that statement you made about being more mindful, having mindfulness in the midst of your situation, and
Mm-hmm.
being present, no matter what has happened before, and as well as when you said resolving the pain of infertility. No matter how your outcome comes out, whether you
Mm-hmm.
stop treatment, whether you end up naturally conceiving,
Mm-hmm.
and all those good things. And I think control is a big lesson when you're dealing with infertility and having difficult pregnancies too, is that you realize that you don't have control over anything. And it's a big lesson, I think,
Oh
when
yeah,
you're
that
dealing with infertility.
there's nothing in your control, nothing at all.
Yes, nothing at all. Nothing at all. And what kind of advice would you give someone who may be new to the game, or a veteran, and or an encouraging word you could give them?
I would always say, don't get caught up in the idea of what infertility is or isn't. You can define how you want to create your family, if that's what you want. And I feel like I was stuck for a long time in the idea of what my family was supposed to be and how and when it was supposed to happen. But I'm grateful for the timing. I'm not necessarily grateful for the treatments and all that stuff that I
Yeah.
went through, but I'm grateful for the timing, because um, right now is the right time for me to be a mom. Right
Yeah.
now I'm in that place where I can do that. I've lived my life and I've enjoyed, traveling, doing things. I've, I've done a lot in this
Yeah.
little life. And so I feel like I'm not in a place where I resent being a mother, or,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I'm too old to enjoy my child. I'm just in the right place, and I couldn't have planned it, and so I'm a big believer that God has a plan, that we are not in
Mm-hmm.
control,
Mm-hmm.
and that we just kind of have to write it out and see what's next. Um, so I feel like that's important. And the other thing is, take care of yourself, because, any fertility or infertility issues are going to be best resolved, or, a best balanced if you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I neglected that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have done more self-care when I was going through my fertility treatments. I wasn't. I was a train wreck.
Me too. Me
I
too.
was a
Definitely.
train wreck. So I wish that I would have, taken care of my body, and been more at peace, and, you know, use that time to kind of prepare my body, beforehand and during. But I didn't. So that would be
Yeah.
something that I would definitely recommend, because I always say to myself, what if I had lost weight before I started my fertility treatments? And what if I,
Mm-hmm.
I start thinking about all that stuff. But the thing is, the
Mm-hmm.
what ifs don't matter, because we're here now.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, taking care of yourself, I think is super important, and just having the idea and picture of what it is that you want for your life. And, it doesn't have to match up with what other people think. I think that my husband and I are aliens, and we pretty much just come up with our own plan.
Yep. Yep.
Like,
Yep.
yeah, we're just going to do this thing, like right now. I mean, our family's like, oh my God, they're into the marijuana. What is happening over there? They moved to California and they went crazy. But it's just who we are. Like, we are, we're just forward thinkers and independent. And so we were like, okay, if fertility is not going to happen for us, then we started thinking about what was next, which I mentioned before was like traveling. But then when we did get pregnant, it was kind of like, okay, switch gears. This is what
Yeah.
we're going to do now, So it's definitely been an adventure. And I think that, you know, the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway is that you are not less of a person because you don't get pregnant instantly, or because you have to do treatments or whatever it is. Like, I feel like I lived a long time feeling like I was less of a woman or less of a human. And
Yeah, feelings of inadequacy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wish that I hadn't felt those things, and that I had explored it more in a positive way, because I feel like I could have it could have impacted my health better if I wasn't focused on, you know, feeling inadequate and not taking care of myself and all those things.
Yeah, but you know, it's all, you know, the universe and the creator, they take you on a ride so you can learn
Oh
the
yeah.
lessons that you need to learn. And
Oh yeah.
it's so difficult to keep your mental health in order, you know, while you're going through it, because it's just like, I'm waiting to do this, I'm waiting to take a test, I'm waiting the 2-week wait, and there's just so much going on. Then you have work, then you have life. I mean, like, I used to forget to pay bills during the process because I would be so consumed, and my thought process was so consumed on becoming a mom.
Everything.
You know what I mean?
I
And
was turning in
2
them
days later,
papers.
the bill was due Monday, and I didn't pay it till Friday. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's just, it's all consuming,
I
and
know.
it's so hard to find balance
It
sometimes in the
is.
midst of it.
I was going to school. I was doing like a clinical hours. I was teaching at a college um for school, like, you know, for part of my program that I was in. And to be honest with you, it's like I was just basically just making it. Okay, that paper is due at 11:59. And I was
Yeah.
submitting my paper at 11:57. You know,
Yep.
whatever it was. You know, it was a very it was just really, really tough. So I definitely feel like, yeah, you get caught up in all those things. And so it's really hard to kind of figure out, like, you know, what's next.
Mm-hmm. I thank you so much, again, Sandra, for coming on and sharing your journey with us. You've made some really good points, and I hope that someone out there, at least one person, my goal is always is if one person can get connected with it, and it touches them in a way, to give them some hope and encouragement. That's all I'm here to do, and I've done my job for the day. So again, I thank you. And did you have any social media handles you wanted to share?
They can find me pretty much everywhere at the Kushners, TheKushNurse, at the Kushners, pretty much on all social media.
Okay.
And thank you so much for having me, Monique. I am so passionate about this podcast and what you're doing, because I think it's so important. And I always tell people, I'm like, just because I have my baby does not mean that I stop thinking about and praying about all the people out there who are struggling with infertility, because I know how difficult it is, and trust me, those feelings don't just disappear.
No.
You remember what you went through.
Yeah, you do. You do. Thank you so much again, Sandra. I appreciate you. I'm gonna have to get you back on and talk some more about the
Yes,
services that you offer,
awesome.
and everything. And I definitely, yeah, I just appreciate it.
Thank you
This
so
is
much,
my
Monique.
first passion project, so you know, you coming on, and it's really, I really do appreciate it. And I'm gonna have you back on in the future too as well.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
love,
I'm so
so
excited
much.
to have you. Thank you, Monique.